Before we get started, I want to let you all know that I now have an account for Phoenix Studios up on Instagram, and you can follow it at Phoenix Studios Entertainment. Please check it out, and thank you guys so much for all your support. Okay, Birds of Prey was trying to accomplish multiple things at once. It wanted to make a female empowering comic book film by focusing on an all-female ensemble. It also wanted to showcase Harley Quinn as a strong, independent character worthy of her own standalone film. It also wanted to highlight the sexism that is still prevalent in modern American society. It also just wanted to be a fun and flamboyant movie that audiences could have a good time with. But I think with that criteria in mind, the writers could have handled this project with a little bit more grace than they initially used. And by being more authentic and inclusive with its ideals of feminism, I think it could have helped this film reach its full creative potential. Now, this may come as a surprise to some of you, but Birds of Prey is a feminist piece. And before I go any further on that topic, I'm going to let Knuckles here explain my stance on feminism.
You know, Amy, anytime someone calls attention to the breaking of gender rules, it ultimately undermines the concept of gender equality by implying that this is an exception and not the status quo. What? Just because I'm a meathead doesn't mean I'm not a feminist.
True feminism doesn't seek for one sex to have dominance over the other. It seeks to establish a balance and maintain equality between both sexes. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The world should be that way in my opinion. But unfortunately, there are people out there who claim to be feminists, but will treat men unfairly and ostracize them, only to hide behind a political movement and misuse the term feminism as an excuse to justify their hate. Whether this was done intentionally or not, I'm not sure, but Birds of Prey unfortunately fell into the man-hating spectrum of feminism. It's subtle, but it's there. Captain Marvel, a movie that was bashed by audiences because of its political significance, is actually a better feminist piece altogether than Birds of Prey. It's not a better movie than Birds of Prey, but it is a better feminist piece, and here's why. Captain Marvel handled its morality concerning feminism with more finesse because it was realistic and authentic. In the real world, there are bad men and there are good men, just as there are bad women and there are good women. Both sexes possess a positive and negative presence in Captain Marvel, but in Birds of Prey, there wasn't a single positive male presence in the entire story. Not even Doc, who's Harley's landlord and the only person that she considers to be a real friend, counts as a positive male presence in this movie because he sells her out to her enemies. The closest thing you got to a positive male figure was that one guy at the club who grudgingly obeyed Black Mask and apologized as he tore off that girl's dress. That guy was just a background character, he wasn't even a real person. And he's the only man in the entire movie who tries to be nice to a girl. Every man in Birds of Prey was portrayed in one way or another as being bad or being passive enough to be considered as bad. All of the positivity in Birds of Prey was placed upon the shoulders of the female characters, which is pretty much the entire cast, basking them with all the praise and approval while all the male characters were moved to the corner and frowned upon. By trying to combat sexism, Birds of Prey became sexist, and contradicted its entire purpose in establishing equality for women. You can't put out a fire with more fire, and you can't fix exclusion with even more exclusion. That's just counterproductive, and it just makes inequality worse than it already is. Meanwhile, in Captain Marvel, you don't just see Carol and Maria act as heroes while Jan Rog acted as a villain, you also saw the Supreme Intelligence play an antagonistic role, while men like Nick Fury and Talos stepped up to the plate to help Carol take down the bad guys. There was a balance between the sexes. It didn't favor men over women or women over men. It clearly showcased that both sexes have equal value and they each have something unique that they can bring to the table. Every character in the film had the ability to use their gender differences to complement one another in meaningful ways. That's true feminism.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
So, while Birds of Prey didn't execute their feminist message with as much finesse as they could have, I think there was a way that they could have gotten their point across a little bit more effectively without having to exclude anyone for the sake of appeasing an exclusive demographic. That solution will come in the form of 3 characters: Jim Gordon, Police Commissioner of Gotham City; Victor Zsasz, bodyguard and executioner for the Black Mask; and Bruno, the butch leader of a gang of neo-Nazi criminals. We'll touch more on those guys later. But Jim Gordon will be the positive male presence that this film desperately needs, and he'll pretty much replace Renee Montoya and fill in for her role as the hero antagonist to the plot. For those of you who don't know, the hero antagonist is a character that is opposed to the protagonist but is still technically a hero. You see examples of this in characters like Norrington from Pirates of the Caribbean and Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad. And if you're upset that I removed the only lesbian character in Birds of Prey, don't worry. I compensated for that lack of LGBTQ representation by introducing the bisexual relationship that Harley had with a particular character in the New 52 comics, but I'll touch more on that later in the rewrite. The first step I want to take in rewriting Birds of Prey is reverting the film back to its roots as the Gotham City Sirens, like it was originally planned during the film's early development stages. For those of you who don't know, the The Gotham City Sirens are an all-female team of anti-hero supervillains that consist of Harley Quinn, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy. A lot of fans were looking forward to seeing the Gotham City Sirens be adapted to the big screen, so naturally, there were a few eyebrows that were raised when it was announced that the film would abandon this approach and become a Birds of Prey movie instead. So, this rewrite will more or less follow the same story beats as the original Birds of Prey, except we're using the Gotham City Sirens instead. I'm not going to do an in-depth rewrite like my Transformers 2 rewrite where I expand and go into detail on character interactions and dialogue. I'm pretty much just going to briefly go over the plot and which particular scenes and characters we can modify to send a more positive and inclusive feminist message for this film. Alright, here we go. Okay, so while the original film did an amazing job at making the audience feel the Joker's presence even though he was never shown on screen, the same cannot be said for his arch-nemesis Batman. Both characters are equally crucial to the world of Gotham City, and they each have equal influence over the rest of the characters who inhabit Gotham. Gotham doesn't revolve around these two specific characters, but they do have a lot of influence on the rest of the cast. Unlike Joker, Batman is only mentioned once or twice throughout the whole Birds of Prey film, and he seems to have entirely disappeared from the city, and nobody seems to have noticed. It's like he never even existed. Criminals like Harley and Zsasz are running rampant at night and in broad daylight, unafraid of being stopped by the cops or any vigilantes. The police themselves don't even seem to notice Batman's absence. So, for this rewrite, I just want to include a quick throwaway line from Harley in her opening narration about how Batman is temporarily out of Gotham due to Justice League obligations, allowing the city's criminal underworld to act up in his hiatus. To showcase this, I want to include a quick segment in Harley's narration where we see Victor Zsasz cutting up an innocent victim and taunting them on how neither the Batman nor the cops will be coming to their rescue. Harley's opening narration will pretty much stay the same, showcasing her animated childhood, her breakup with the Joker, and how she's dealing with the aftermath. We'll still include the scenes where Harley raises the ire of Black Mask by breaking the legs of his driver, and the scene where Harley buys a hyena, except instead of buying just one hyena named Bruce, she's going to buy two pet hyenas and name them Bud and Louw. It not only fits with the original lore, but it's also a testament to Harley's loneliness, because really, who needs two hyenas? I once had a professor in college who, after his divorce, he bought two 3D printers that he didn't even need. Human beings have a tendency to buy material possessions as a coping mechanism to try and satisfy their emotional needs, but most of the time this doesn't work. And that should be the same case for Harley. Even though her new pets make her happy, that joy is only temporary, and it's eventually replaced with misery and grief because she's lacking the love she truly needs. We fast forward to Harley driving that semi-truck into the Ace Chemicals plant, and that will kickstart the beginning of Harley's character arc. For those of you who follow my channel, you'll know that I talk about character arcs a lot, and by now you should know how they work. But for those of you who are new or you're just not as versed in developing character arcs, I'm going to really quickly walk you through what a character arc is and what Harley's arc will look like in this rewrite. For those of you who are getting just sick and tired of hearing me talk about character arcs, you can go ahead and skip to this time in the video. So, a character arc is the inner journey or transformation of the soul that the character experiences over the course of a story. The lesson that the character learns at the end of this arc is usually tied directly into the story's moral theme. Character arcs are usually made up of 4 parts: a lie, a ghost, a want, and a need. The lie is a misconception that the character has of themselves or of the world around them. The ghost is the reason that supports this lie, and it's the reason why the character believes the lie to be true. The want is the character's strongest desire, and it is the character's pursuit of this want that drives the plot forward. The need is the flaw that the character must recognize within themselves and overcome if they are ever to succeed in acquiring their want. The lie in Harley's arc is that she thinks only selfishness will help her survive Gotham City. The ghost that supports this lie is that every successful crime boss in Gotham, ranging from the Joker to Penguin to Black Mask, are all selfish and conceited. They only care about their own self-interests. So just about every person Harley has ever associated with practices this outlook on life. So this ideology has definitely rubbed off on Harley by now. The want that Harley is chasing after is love and acceptance from her peers. Due to her histrionic personality disorder, Harley is constantly seeking the approval of those around her. She does this to such an unhealthy degree that it backfires on her big time. Her constant need to be the center of attention is what sabotages her search for love and causes her to lose favor with everyone she cares about. The need that Harley must overcome is that she will have to abandon her shallowness and self-centeredness if she's going to be successful in acquiring the love and attention that she so desperately desires. Therefore, the themes of Harley's arc will evolve around self-absorbance, support through friendship, and learning how to move on. Okay, now that we got that squared away, on with the show. Commissioner Jim Gordon is investigating the scene of a homicide and is completely stressed out as the detectives pinpoint the crime as the handiwork of serial killer Victor Zsasz. Everyone in the department knows that Zsasz is under the employment of Roman Sionis, aka the Black Mask, one of Gotham's biggest gangsters. Even though Gordon has been building a case against Sionis for years, he and the rest of his crew are practically untouchable thanks to Sionis' connections with the city's corrupt judges. Gordon rubs his eyes and tells the cops that he needs a minute. Ever since Batman's leave of absence, the criminal underworld of Gotham has been running Gordon ragged. He's at the end of his rope and he doesn't know how much more he can take. He goes outside for a smoke break when he witnesses the explosion at Ace Chemicals, and he quickly heads over there with a squad of officers. Once he finds Harley's necklace, Gordon is able to put two and two together and conclude that Harley is no longer with the Joker. He anticipates that without the Joker's protection, Harley will have a giant target painted on her back, and if the police can get to her before the rest of Gotham can, she may prove critical in providing them with incriminating information that can be used to put away Gotham's kingpins for good, particularly kingpins like Sionis. With her knowledge and cooperation, the GCPD might actually have a chance at cleaning up the streets and getting the city back under control. So, Gordon orders an official manhunt on Harley Quinn. Meanwhile, Harley herself is celebrating this new chapter in her life by stealing another car and driving recklessly across town until she crashes at Robinson Park. She stumbles drunkenly out of the car and approaches a group of thugs who are getting high at the park. She slurs her words as she asks them to help her spell the word mercenary on her business card. The gangsters recognize that Harley is severely intoxicated, and they contemplate whether or not they should take advantage of her in this vulnerable state. Some of the thugs are afraid of incurring the Joker's wrath, while others point out that Harley is too drunk to remember anything that will happen, and the Joker will be none the wiser. Once they're all in agreement, the thugs corner Harley and they're about to rape her when the very park itself seems to come to life. The vines, trees, and shrubbery will ensnare the thug and kill them as a mysterious figure emerges out of the nighttime fog. It's Poison Ivy. I'm not sure who I'd cast as Poison Ivy in this rewrite. There's definitely been some good fan casts going around the internet, and I feel like any one of those women could play Ivy, so I'll just let you guys decide in the comment section below. So, Poison Ivy scoops up the delirious Harley into her vines and carries her back to her hideout beneath the botanical gardens. Once Harley comes to, Ivy will explain to Harley what happened and provide her with some ginger tea to help soothe her hangover. Harley will remember Poison Ivy as being one of the patients within Arkham Asylum when she was still a psychiatrist there. Harley will recount Poison Ivy's profile and how she had once been a college intern named Pamela Isley, who had been manipulated and experimented on by her seductive professor, Dr. Woodrow, which was the cause of Ivy's transformation into a metahuman. Harley compliments Ivy on breaking out of Arkham Asylum and commends her for successfully staying low after she broke out. Ivy and Harley become fast friends as they bond over the mutual abandonment and mistreatment that they both suffered at the hands of their abusive lovers. Like Harley, Poison Ivy is depressed and lonely, but she has big dreams of using her powers to help save the endangered jungles of South America. Ivy shares with Harley that she's working on a new formula that allows large patches of vegetation like forests and jungles to grow overnight, but she's missing a few key ingredients that will complete the formula, and she's planning to stage a heist at Wayne Tech to help get the missing ingredients that she needs. Harley shares with Poison Ivy that she doesn't like owing people debts, so to even things out and to repay Ivy for saving Harley from the rapists, Harley offers to join Ivy on her heist and help her steal the ingredients from Wayne Tech. While pulling off the heist, Harley and Poison Ivy bump into Catwoman, who was also in the middle of ripping Wayne Tech off of some high-value equipment. Since Zoe Kravitz was cast as Catwoman in the new Matt Reeves Batman movie, I'm just going to assume that she will continue to play as Catwoman moving forward in the DCEU. So realistically, if a Gotham City Sirens film had still been made, there's a high chance Zoe Kravitz would have been cast to play as Selina Kyle. Plus, it doesn't hurt that she already has a supervillain role in her resume from when she played as Angel in X-Men First Class. She also voiced Catwoman in the Lego Batman movie, so there's that too. I like how in recent portrayals of Harley Quinn, she puts her psychology degree to good use in psychoanalyzing all the people she engages with. So, I figured she'd do the same thing to Catwoman in this scenario, and this little distraction will last long enough for the girls to get caught by security and the alarm to go off. A batch of Wayne Tech security drones are activated and they arrive to apprehend the thieves. With the odds against them, the three women agree to join forces in order to escape. This can lead to a really sweet action scene where the girls combine their powers to fight as a single unstoppable force. Their effectiveness as a team really works well, and once all three of them are in the clear, Poison Ivy comments on how well they all operate together and that they should consider forming an official crew. Harley and Catwoman approve of the idea, and they return to the Botanical Gardens hideout, and they begin to set it up as their base of operations. Harley will officially move into the hideout, and she'll put Catwoman on edge by casually walking in with boxes full of junk and Bud and Louw following her while they give their iconic hyena giggles. Catwoman brings along her protege, Holly Robinson, and introduces her to Harley and Poison Ivy. In most versions of the character, Holly Robinson is a teenage orphan who becomes Catwoman's ward after she bails her out of a life of prostitution on the streets. Catwoman brings Holly on board to serve as the team's assistant and errand girl. She'll serve as our Cassandra Cain replacement in this rewrite. Holly is an extremely skilled pickpocket, having learned from Catwoman herself, and she is 100% on board with helping out the Sirens since she thinks it's badass that a group of meta-human women are carving out a name for themselves in Gotham City. While celebrating their alliance over pizza and margaritas, the 4 girls brainstorm names for their group, and they all agree to settle on the name Gotham City Sirens. We can then montage to the Sirens enjoying a streak of successful heists together, and Harley and Ivy will grow closer and closer with each job until they eventually start dating like they do in the New 52 comics. With each caper, I figured each of the Sirens could take turns using their sexuality as a weapon to distract the guards and seduce them before incapacitating them and seizing the loot. Even Bud and Louw get in on some of the action when Harley brings them along for a couple of jobs. Once this montage ends, we can cut to the scene where Black Mask and Zsasz execute the Keogh family. Except, there's 2 things I want to change about this scene. 1, I would tweak Victor Zsasz to be more in line with his comic book appearance. If the writers were going to take liberties with these characters, which they absolutely did, then instead of limiting Zsasz to being Black Mask's creepy and jealous boyfriend/sidekick, they could have added to this by keeping the character's original status as a serial killer, and they could have altered his modus operandi to making young attractive females be his favorite type of victims. This would clearly make the Gotham City Sirens prime targets for Zsasz, and we can play with the ideals of misogyny and sexism more with Zsasz as we move on with this rewrite. 2. Roman Sionis should be wearing his black mask more often in this movie. Not just because it's accurate to his comic book counterpart, but because it's a significant factor to his mental state and psychology as a character. Like most of Batman's rogue gallery, Black Mask doesn't even have superpowers. He's just a regular human being with deep psychological scars and a lot of emotional baggage. In the original Birds of Prey film, it's briefly mentioned by Sionis that everyone in Gotham assumed that everything was handed to him just because his father was the wealthy founder of Sionis Industries. But in reality, Sionis had to fight tooth and nail for every little thing that he possesses today. This gave the writers an opportunity to flesh out their villain and make him a more rounded character, but they ultimately chose to sacrifice Roman Sionis' potential as a complex antagonist for the sake of the film's message of sexism. Rather than just have Black Mask misogyny be one of his 2 defining character traits in this movie, the other being narcissism, we can add more to his character by building up on his past in the scene where he tries to make a deal with Keogh. Sionis can open himself up to Keogh in an attempt to establish trust by explaining his background to Keogh. Sionis can explain how his father never truly cared about his son, and only cared about maintaining his social standing with the rest of Gotham's socialites. This hypocrisy and neglect from his father drew Sionis over the edge until one day he decided he had enough, and he killed his parents by burning the family mansion down and passing it off as an accidental house fire. This is what allowed Sionis to inherit his family's fortune and build up the False Face Society, a powerful crime syndicate that was mobilized under the shadow of Sionis Industries. Sionis will tell Keogh, "We all have masks. My parents wore masks of politics and lies. You wear the mask of the Golden Lions, while I choose to wear the mask of Gotham itself." See, that's why Sionis wears his iconic mask whenever he's dealing in illegal activities. Not because he's concerned with keeping his identity a secret, but because his neglected childhood later developed into narcissistic personality disorder and a curious obsession with masks. Sionis sees his own evil as a reflection of Gotham City itself, hence the Black Mask. The Gotham City Siren streak of success is interrupted when Holly goes out on a walk and she pickpockets one of Black Mask's goons, who is carrying the diamond from the original film that serves as the story's MacGuffin. Harley will be captured by the False Face Society and brought before Black Mask the exact same way that it happens in the original film. And just like it happens in Birds of Prey, Harley will accept the contract to retrieve the lost diamond, and that will serve as the inciting incident to our rewrite. And just for his own amusement, Sionis will give Harley some competition by placing a bounty on Holly's head. Moving on to Act 2, Harley returns to the Sirens' hideout looking for Holly, only to find out from Catwoman that Holly got arrested earlier that day by the GCPD. Her pickpocketing ways finally caught up to her. Catwoman is about to launch a rescue when Harley tries to stop her and offers to retrieve Holly herself. But Catwoman refuses to abandon Holly, and finds Harley's insistence on going alone suspicious. After Catwoman leaves, Poison Ivy recognizes that Harley is extremely anxious, and prompts Harley to share the truth with her. But Harley insists that she doesn't have time to explain and that she needs Ivy's help. But Ivy wants Harley to come clean with her before agreeing to help her with anything. Rather than be open and honest with her girlfriend, Harley leaves without an explanation, which hurts Ivy's feelings. Meanwhile, Gordon brings Sionis in for questioning, and during this interview, Gordon tells Sionis that he believes Sionis is responsible for the death of his parents, and that he covered it up as an accident. Sionis pretends to not be offended by Gordon's accusations, and Gordon goes on to question Sionis on all of his company's activities. But Sionis has a legitimate alibi for everything. While Catwoman scouts out the GCPD from the outside and starts coming up with a strategy to bust Holly out, Harley suddenly breaks in through the front doors with a clownish grenade launcher, and frees Holly in the exact same colorful way that we see her free Cassandra in the original film. Sionis becomes extremely agitated when he realizes that Holly and the diamond are so close within his grasp, but there's nothing he can do about it without exposing himself to the police. He casually grabs his phone and updates the contract he placed on Holly, informing all of the bounty hunters on Holly's current location within the GCPD. With his hands full and no real evidence against Sionis, Gordon reluctantly lets Sionis go so that he can contend with the break-in. As soon as he's outside, Sionis calls up Zsasz and tells him that he has a very special job for him. Harley and Holly escape into the evidence warehouse, where they are confronted by Catwoman. Harley refuses to hand Holly over once she realizes that Holly swallowed the diamond, and she continues to avoid answering Catwoman when she presses Harley on why she's kidnapping Holly. This leads to a fight between Harley and Catwoman that is interrupted by the same gang of bikers from the original film, except, instead of bikers, this will be a gang of neo-Nazi bounty hunters led by a minor villain from the comics named Bruno, and they've come to fulfill the contract on Holly's little head. Bruno will taunt Harley about being the unwanted leftovers of the Joker, and she'll serve as the negative female presence in this film that balances out the positive male presence Gordon brings to the cast. The same skirmish with the bikers from the original film will take place, with the exception of Catwoman being included in the brawl. Bruno and the neo-Nazis are all eventually killed by a timely intervention from Poison Ivy. She aggressively ties Harley up with her vines, and the other 3 sirens confront Harley on everything that's been going on. In their attempts to force the truth out of her, Harley starts crying and the sirens are unable to understand her through her blubbering. Catwoman finally puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that Harley is trying to collect a bounty on Holly's head after she finds Holly's contract on one of the dead Nazis' phones. Harley finally comes clean and explains to her friends that being a part of a team is fun and all, but if you want to survive in the criminal underworld, you're eventually going to have to ditch everyone else and look out for yourself if you want to make it out alive. She cites the Penguin, Black Mask, and the Joker as examples of self-made crime lords who are all successful because of their ambitious nature and self-centeredness. Harley says that she wants to quit the Gotham City Sirens, and while Catwoman could care less since she already doesn't trust Harley, Poison Ivy's devastated to hear this from Harley, and she takes Harley not wanting to be a part of the Sirens as not wanting to be with her. Before they can do anything else, multiple SWAT teams arrive and surround the Sirens. Harley then notices a particular weapon on a nearby shelf that could be her ticket to freedom. It's Killer Moth's cocoon gun. She uses it to fire blobs of sticky material at the SWAT officers, gluing them to the wall and having the same gooey effect as Spider-Man's webs. This type of weapon will definitely fit in with the spunky tone established in the original Birds of Prey. Harley will then web up both Ivy and Catwoman and make off with Holly. Catwoman manages to cut herself free with her claws right as Gordon arrives with reinforcements. Ivy begs for Catwoman to hurry up and free her as well, but Catwoman tells her that she'll come back for Ivy after she rescues Holly. As Ivy watches Catwoman leave, she has flashbacks of Dr. Woodrow experimenting on her and then running away when she starts to mutate. We see a powerful combination of fury and heartbreak in Ivy's face as she's apprehended by the police. With Poison Ivy in their custody, Gordon tries to get her to talk and give them leads on Harley's location, but Ivy just ignores him. Gordon reveals that he read up on Ivy's profile in Arkham and he sympathizes with her, telling Ivy that she reminds him of his daughter Barbara. Gordon offers to help Ivy out and promises to talk to Star Labs about procuring a cure for her mutation if she cooperates with him and gives him the information that he needs. But Ivy only gives Gordon the silent treatment and he sighs with exhaustion as he gives up on her. Harley retreats to the Siren's hideout with Holly, and she starts packing up her things and preparing to hit the road. She admits to Holly that she feels guilty for leaving her friends behind, but reaffirms her decision by saying that the only way you can survive in Gotham is by looking after your own skin. The hideout is suddenly bombed by Zsasz in the False Face Society, and Harley's pet hyenas Bud and Louw are caught in the crossfire and killed. Emotionally shattered by this loss, Harley is in no shape to fight, and Holly is forced to drag her to safety, and they manage to avoid the False Face Society amidst the chaos and destruction of the burning hideout. Catwoman arrives at the ruined hideout and is horrified to see it in flames. As she begins searching through the rubble, she is captured by Zsasz. Harley sees this from a distance and acknowledges that the collateral inflicted on Catwoman and her pets are all the consequences of her own shallow and conceited decisions. Harley hits a rock bottom and starts to beat herself up until she gets an epiphany. She looks over at Holly and tells her that she has a plan on how they're going to get payback on Sionis. While Poison Ivy is being transported from the GCPD to Arkham Asylum by Gordon and his escort, the convoy is suddenly ambushed and Ivy is freed by Harley, who apologizes to her. Ivy immediately starts choking Harley with her vines and furiously accuses her girlfriend of abandoning her and being just as disloyal as everyone else who has mistreated her in the past. Poison Ivy feels like a fool for ever falling for someone like Harley. Harley admits that she's a terrible person and vows to do everything in her power to make it up to Ivy. But for now, they need to focus on rescuing Catwoman before Zsasz kills her. Ivy is still bitter about Catwoman abandoning her, and she could care less about what happens to her. But Harley appeals to the motherly caretaker side of Poison Ivy and reminds her of all the good times that they all shared as sirens together. Ivy reluctantly agrees to help rescue Selina. Meanwhile, at Sionis Industries, Zsasz is sadistically torturing Catwoman and explains his nihilistic philosophy on life and death and how he views himself as a savior who finds purpose in liberating soulless people from their dull and empty lives. Catwoman accuses Zsasz of being a misogynist pig for targeting young women and cutting them up, but in reality, Zsasz is above such petty beliefs. He doesn't discriminate in his method of killing, and he'll gladly slaughter an ugly old man just as quickly as he would a beautiful young stripper. He just admits that there is more joy to be had in releasing the souls of young women as opposed to other types of victims. Zsasz points out that just because he has a preference in his murderous appetite, that doesn't make him prejudiced. Black Mask will be watching this exchange from the corner with delight when he receives a call from Harley. She offers to trade Holly in exchange for Catwoman, and Black Mask accepts. Just like in the original version, the climax will take place at the abandoned amusement park that had once been the Joker and Harley's headquarters. Zsasz will arrive alone with Catwoman, and Harley will bring out Holly. Harley will stall for time by psychoanalyzing Zsasz and his behavior, giving Poison Ivy enough time to summon up a large man-eating plant from the pier who ambushes Zsasz and devours him. Commissioner Gordon will then show up. He's bruised and battered from Harley's ambush on his convoy, and a standoff ensues when he aims 2 pistols at the sirens and orders them to hand over Holly. Harley will then humorously note that she forgot to tie up Gordon and the rest of the officers from the convoy before she left. The standoff is interrupted when Black Mask, who had anticipated foul play from Harley, arrives with the entire False Face Society. This forces the sirens and Gordon to barricade themselves inside the funhouse. None of the sirens trust each other or even want to work together, but Harley insists that they all need to work together if they're going to survive the night. The final battle will play out pretty much the same way it does in the original film, with Gordon being the one who gets wounded with a bullet from Black Mask, while the crime boss himself flees the scene with Holly as his hostage. While Poison Ivy holds off the rest of the False Face Society and watches over an injured Gordon, Harley and Catwoman give chase. Catwoman snags a motorcycle while Harley uses roller skates in the same way that Harley and Huntress do in the original film. Harley and Catwoman will disable Sionis' car, while also simultaneously wrecking Catwoman's motorcycle and knocking her unconscious. Harley goes into the foggy pier after Sionis after he holds Holly at gunpoint. The rest of the scene plays out the same way it does in the actual film, with Holly slipping a grenade into Sionis' pocket and blowing him to pieces. In the aftermath of the battle, the Gotham City sirens regroup, and Harley is happy to see that everyone is back together safe and sound, but the others aren't as jovial as Harley, and she quickly notices this and is disturbed by the rest of her team's mood. After everything that's happened between them, with all the lies and backstabbing, things cannot go back to the way they once were. Poison Ivy doesn't feel like she can count on either Catwoman or Harley after they both left her, and Catwoman isn't willing to risk trusting Harley, who's already double-crossed her before. And with that, the sirens disband, and they decide to go their separate ways. Harley is the most heartbroken over this, and when she asks Poison Ivy about the status of their relationship, Ivy reluctantly breaks up with Harley. She tells Harley that she doesn't hold any hard feelings towards her and will always look to her as a friend. If Harley ever needs Ivy's help, she promises to be there for her. Harley says that she understands and asks the sirens if they'll join her for one last goodbye dinner. They all agree, and while they eat burritos from a food truck amidst the ruins of their old hideout, Harley leaves to go use the bathroom, when in reality, she takes off with Catwoman's motorcycle and giggles with joy while Poison Ivy watches on, laughing. This will pretty much be the same scene from the original film where Harley steals Black Canary's car, just with Catwoman and her motorcycle. Harley will then give a closing narration on how Poison Ivy completed her formula for helping forests grow overnight, and she left Gotham for South America in her journey to preserve the Earth's jungles. Gordon went back to running the GCPD, and his life was made a lot easier when Batman returned shortly thereafter. While Catwoman grew a conscience and partnered up with the Dark Knight as one of his secret informants on the Gotham underworld, Harley kept the diamond for herself and sold it to buy herself a vacation on a tropical island. When Harley returns to Gotham, she finds that word has spread about the Black Mask's death, and the rest of Gotham's criminal community starts to respect her and fear her. She starts coming up with her own nicknames like Cupid of Crime and Maiden of Mischief as she starts up her career as a mercenary. We can see her in a new outfit, and she'll have changed her look and reinvented herself again so that DC can sell more Harley Quinn toys. The final scene can show Harley accepting her first job from an unknown employer who mysteriously keeps his back to the camera. The job is to pull off a heist and rip off the Joker. Harley looks up at the camera and winks before we transition to the end credits. So there you have it, that concludes my rewrite for Birds of Prey. I replaced the original one-sided feminist argument in the film's theme with a more balanced and authentic depiction of feminism that not only empowers female characters, but it also doesn't suppress the male characters and establishes both a negative and positive presence for both sexes. Like the themes in Harley's character arc, the themes in this film would be about self-absorbance, fellowship, and learning how to move on. And while the film would be titled Gotham City Sirens, the story would have focused on Harley Quinn as the main protagonist in the same way that Guardians of the Galaxy focused on Star-Lord as the main protagonist. I was still able to fulfill all of Birds of Prey's criteria, by not only having a Gotham-based team of female protagonists, one of them being an LGBTQ character, but I also had a misogynist male villain, I maintained a fun and colorful spunky tone, and I presented what I hoped to be a more positive representation of feminism. For what the film was going for, I think the feminism in this rewrite was
perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
That being said, I have a couple of questions I want to pose to you guys. 1. Who would you like to see play Poison Ivy in the DCEU? I feel like the requirements to play Poison Ivy wouldn't be as specific as they would be for a role like Harley Quinn. So I think there's a large number of actresses who could have done an equally good job with portraying Poison Ivy. I know there's a lot of fan casts circling around the internet, but I'd like to hear what you guys think on the matter. My second question is in regards to Harley's new look at the end of this rewrite. What new design would you guys have chosen for Harley Quinn as she starts her new career in being a soldier of fortune? Because I personally wasn't a fan of Harley's look in Birds of Prey, and I would have imagined her adopting her Injustice 2 design for this rewrite. And then maybe when she takes up work as a mercenary, she'd have looked a little bit more like this, but that's just my opinion. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below what your guys' answers are to these questions, and I'll see you all next time.